guys, you know what time it is. It's time for yet another edition of the Blue White Breakdown podcast, PennLive's detailed look at everything, all things Penn State. I'm Bob Flounders, joined by David Jones. He is in his lair in Downingtown. I will not reveal the exact location, even though I really want to. Actually, I don't remember exactly where it is. But yeah, we're going to talk about James Franklin's Tuesday news conference. 1-0 Penn State is now up to number 13 in the coaches poll just released. They get Ball State in their home opener Saturday at 3:30. Dave, how are you doing? I hope your dog Kaiser is doing well, and I'm glad to see you made it all the way back from Wisconsin. It was quite a weekend.
Yeah, I'm just that's probably the last time I'm ever going to go to Camp Randall. We only see him about once every 6 or 8 years. Yeah. And I tell everyone I meet, I talk to a lot of Penn State fans there and some Wisconsin fans. Got a picture taken with the Wisconsin band, which is a terrific band. I think it's the best band in the league.
Better than Penn State's?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Better than Ohio State. Better than Ohio State's too. I mean, the opening and everything. They've got just have style. It was a very good weekend, all things considered, except for my N95 mask. That wasn't too pleasant, but you know, got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, you survived it. How's the dog? The guys that are just listening, I think, to the audio don't necessarily get to see. There are moments when Kaiser, your German Shepherd, jumps into the picture. But for people who are actually watching the video version of this, I'm sure they look forward to it every week, as do I.
He's just been taken by mom to the trail, so he has no use for me. He doesn't care about me anymore. I took him on our little trail through the woods, and I barely got in here in time because he was snorting and snuffling and digging for God knows what kind of varmint out there. But
yeah, real quick, I know you have him on a new diet. You seem to think it's working out for him.
It's raw diet, yeah. Have you heard about the raw diet?
Well, you were telling me about it. I'm trying to imagine your dog eating carrots.
Yeah, I fed him carrots and peas along with some loaf, some of that fresh loaf they have, and a raw egg this morning.
He's just like Rocky now. That's great. You train him for
a one egg.
You're just trying to get him healthy.
Yeah, I think Rocky had 5, didn't he? Yeah. The dogs are not supposed to have more than 1. But yeah, he's hale and hearty. He's a healthy 4-year-old.
All right, Dave, let's get to it. I'm sure you had a chance to listen in to James. Anything strike you about any of his comments? I have a couple of thoughts, but I'll start with you.
Well, everyone's talking about, especially after that Louisville, Mississippi game last night, everybody's talking about targeting, and they had a Big Ten crew on that game. I don't know if everyone knew that. I guess people probably know now after Lane Kiffin mentioning it at halftime, but I knew that was a Big Ten crew. And they're a little more persnickety, would you say, than the average Southern crew. I don't think either coach was used to that. But it is putting, the rules are what they are. They've been put into effect, and there is no way to get by that for the officials. You're putting the officials in a tough spot. They're always going to, as Franklin said, err on the side of player safety. I believe he said that if it had been him wearing the official's hat, he probably would not have called the targeting on Ellis Brooks. Mm-hmm. But then he said, I get it. I
knew you were going to do that.
He said it.
I know. He did.
And it comes down to this. I think they need to change the rule again so that there are fewer ejections. I saw a couple of examples in that game in Atlanta where the cases were not that egregious to warrant ejection, but the players were ejected. I think we need to go another degree so that I didn't think Ellis Brooks's targeting warranted ejection, and he's not going to be able to play in the first half against Ball State because of it. Right. If it's the Auburn game instead, then it's a big deal. It might still be a big deal. Ball State's not a bad, pretty good football team. Hey, good football team. They don't have any fat kids. He's not going to be able to play, and I don't think it warrants that. So that's my position on it. I think I think only the most egregious cases that compare to spearing those should be reserved for ejections and suspension for the following half or that game, or the only ones that should warrant that.
Yeah.
And you to be clear, you kind of persuaded me that was targeting in the middle of the game. At first, I see Brooks's mask kind of brush the shoulder before he hits the side of the helmet of the ball carrier. It's not a helpless ball carrier, so he has to lower his head and use the crown of his helmet, which I think he kind of did. You talked me into it, but I was kind of in a gray area on that call.
Jones, I talk you into a lot of things. Get used to it.
I gotta tell you, but before we get to that, I gotta tell you, you really nailed that game, because between the NASCAR pace and the taking shots deep, it's true. I mean, they did exactly what you said they were going to do, and they won the game because of it.
Yeah, although I did not pick the game correctly, I did have the spread right. But I'm sure Penn State fans are like, yeah, he didn't really nail the game.
Yeah, well, I had
really nail the game.
I had the under right, but does that matter? No, it doesn't matter. I had the stats right. Does that matter? No. Yeah.
I want to just talk real quick just about Jordan Stout, because James talked about him yesterday when it was announced he was named the Big Ten Special Teams Player of the Week. I just jumped into the comments a little bit, and most of the people who reacted were not necessarily thrilled that he was named, because they cited the fact that he wasn't able to make a short field goal, and I think he had one of his extra points.
He joined an extra point off the upright. It's kind of like getting a Writer of the Year award for tweeting. No, I wouldn't call it that, but I mean, his punting was terrific, and it was a big factor in field position.
Absolutely.
So I guess the Big Ten poobahs are compartmentalizing that award.
Yeah, James did say, on some of the kicks that failed, he pretty much strongly suggested some of it might not have been Jordan's fault. There was a snap issue, an execution issue. When the holder, either on the extra point or the field goal, put the ball down, the laces were at Stout, and that's not the way that Penn State wants it to. But I'll just say this, look, as the season goes on, Dave, I think it's going to be harder for Jordan to do this when the weather gets colder. At Madison, it was a really nice day. There was no wind, and he was just able to hammer every kick. Not only, Dave, were they long, but they were also so high that it really, really bottled Wisconsin up. They always had a pretty long way to go. So even though they outgained them and out first down them, they had to it was a struggle for them to string together plays to get into the red zone.
I
and
thought
then they flipped the bed inside there.
Flipped the field geography constantly, continuously, because his net punting average had to be like near record level, right? I mean, it wasn't just gross punts of 53 and 55 yards. There weren't any returns either, because they were so high. They were just booming. Yes. They were like Ray Guy punts back in the days with the Raiders.
Old number 8.
Yeah. I thought it was also interesting that Franklin said, Jake Pinniger still has a tremendous future. We're going to need him eventually. I don't know. What do you think that meant? We're going to need him eventually? Like if Stout keeps doinking extra points, or what?
I do think, Dave, that James talked about the fact that it is pretty rare to have one guy do kickoffs.
It's a big load.
Kickoffs, punting, short field goals, long field goals, and they're very concerned just about wear and tear on that leg. If they're going to play a full season, which they're expected to do. You could see some instances maybe where they feel like if Jake shows some good things in practice, they might give him a couple of shots just to kind of the pitch count, if you will, could come into play. Or
what do you think? Short field goals and extra points? What do you mean?
Well, I mean, last year they had Jordan Stout was just the long field goal kicker,
right?
And Finger kicked all the extra points and the short field goals. I just think that if Jake has if Jordan would continue to struggle, I think they wouldn't hesitate to go back to Jake. But Franklin did say they chart everything in practice, Dave, and he won the job, and he thought that Jordan did a great job of not letting the missed kicks affect his punting.
I get that. I get it. But I just thought the wording of "we're going to need him eventually" was kind of.
I think he's just trying to encourage Jake. You know,
yeah, that's the way. I guess that's the way you have to read it.
Yeah, I do think by the end of the year, there's going to be a moment at some point, hopefully, where you are in a same space with James Franklin and you're able to do maybe his impersonation. Maybe we could get that set up, because I would love that, because you have certain intricacies of his kind of how he does things down pretty good.
Well, if that happens, then I'll be appreciative of the opportunity, and we will do that.
One thing you're going to have to implement or add to your Franklin arsenal is his use of the word obviously. I was just thinking that, you know, if I was either at Penn State and I had like Tuesday off, or I was just recently out of Penn State and maybe, you know, I was on vacation and I was gonna listen to James Franklin's Tuesday news conference because it streams everywhere. You could play the obviously drinking game with James Franklin, and you could get pretty buzzed
You're
up.
You're just looking for an excuse to play another drinking game. At some point, Bob, we're gonna have to
grow up, Bob. You gotta
have to have an intervention about your drinking games.
And to be honestly, I use the word like too much, way too much, but he loves the word obviously, and I just, you know, I get a kick out of it when I listen to his press conference. But if you're going to do James Franklin, that's got to be in your arsenal.
All right. Well, obviously you're looking for a new opportunity for drinking games. That's what I would say. I thought the trap game question was interesting from Ben Jones.
Sure.
Whether he believed in trap games. And he said he did. He does believe in them. I do believe in spooks. And this would kind of qualify. MAC champions maybe don't take them too seriously. The MAC is probably obviously the I would say that's the least of the 10 major conferences. Wouldn't you say that? It's between the Sun Belt and the MAC. And so that's faint praise winning the MAC, I suppose. But this is a program that's, I mean, they played Indiana pretty close a couple of years ago before COVID. They played a tough game at NC State. They're not someone you can take lightly. They were 7-1 last season. So we got this game. If this isn't a trap game, I don't know what is, because they're between Wisconsin and Auburn. Do you take them? Does your team take them lightly? He said he does believe in trap games if you're inconsistent in your approach. And the subtle things you say. So that's the psychologist in him coming up. So he said he tries to keep all the messaging exactly consistent, down to people in the weight room and everybody else in the program doing exactly the same thing and saying the same things every week. So you could actually see him as anal as he is, actually instituting these mandates, you know, to the point of reminders. But see, you know, it didn't help him against Appalachian State. Was an opener, wasn't it?
It was an opener.
That was a seriously good team. I think that was a better team than this
Satterfield.
That team.
They were lucky to win that game.
That's how Satterfield got the Louisville job. But that team is better than this Ball State team. But you can't take anybody lightly. I think it helps that it's probably a 3:30 start rather than noon. There's nothing sleepier than a noon non-con game against Youngstown State or one of those. You know, it takes guys a quarter to get moving. Also, you know, with I guess Jesse Lucchetta will probably play middle linebacker the first half, right? You don't see any other option, right?
I do not see any other option. It's Jesse Lucchetta or nobody. That's what I say. I do think there's a silver lining to Penn State's erratic offensive day at Wisconsin. You know, they got it going in the second half. The first half was awful. I don't think you have to worry about Penn State's offensive players, you know, looking past Ball State, because they know that they did not get it done for 30 minutes against Wisconsin. I think that they're going to be pretty focused, and I'm pretty sure Mike Yursich will get after them a little bit, and so will his assistants.
Yeah, I would anticipate Ball State will try all the things that Wisconsin did, except they're going to have Ball State players. So I don't know if that'll work. Wisconsin really, as you said before the game, they're very good at disguising blitzes and then coming hard. They came almost every time up the middle, though, with their linebackers. They didn't come wide. They wanted to disrupt not only the running game, but get in Clifford's face. And I thought they were very good at doing that. So the adjustment was quick, and it was good in the second half of starting to go wide. Runs wide, throws wide, and throws deep. So they did everything except inside zone, and that worked pretty well. I mean, if you get 16 points in the second half, and however many first, where they ended up with 11 first downs, so they got 10 in the first half, in the second half.
250 yards of offense. It's just, I know we're talking about this press conference with Dave. I just cannot. I don't understand how Wisconsin can have the ball for almost 43 minutes, and they'll run 95 plays and only score 10 points. I just don't get it, Dave. Talk me through this. I don't get it.
Well, Bob, as you know, we emphasize explosive plays. He's right,
Yeah.
If you're and Jerry DiNardo was on TV talking about it also. The days of explosive play, the days of possession are over. Possession time are over. However, if you have 29 first downs, that's the one. 29 first downs and you score 10 points. That's what's hard to do. I don't know that I've ever seen that. Have you seen that? Because I haven't seen it.
No,
That's about the 3 turnovers.
Penn State's defense won the game. Credit to them. The offense woke up in the second half. But honestly, I know this is piling on. I just don't know what Graham Mertz was thinking at times in the red zone. I don't know.
I was told by Jeff Petrikis, I can say now, the terrific Wisconsin State Journal, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel beat writer. Before the game, that he thought Jack Cohn was really at this point a better quarterback than Graham Mertz. You're the much abused Jack Cohn from your standpoint, I would add. And then all in one day, we saw Jack Cohn play almost flawlessly for Notre Dame against Florida State. And we saw Graham Mertz come up short in a lot of ways. So a couple of the turnovers were just inexplicable. It wasn't like they were even exchanges. The one near the goal line on 1st and goal at the 1, I mean, that really hurt. That was almost like a turnover. Just an inexplicable, the ball flew out of his hands. I don't know what you do as far as coaching with that, hold on to the ball with 2 hands. He did. It just went, whoop, flew out of his hands. And it changed everything. It put the ball at the 7, 2nd and goal. And with that offense, that's a big deal. It's a big deal.
Two personnel notes I wanted to get to that James was asked about. Eric Wilson played most of the game at left guard, but they started Anthony Wiggin against Wisconsin. In season, James is not giving anything away. He said, we'll determine who's going to start based upon how they practiced and some other things, and we'll make that decision this week. To me, clearly, it's going to be Eric Wilson. I thought there was less.
He got more snaps in the second half.
There was less trouble, maybe in terms of getting into the backfield and picking things up and adjusting, passing people off. There was less of that, I think, with him in the game. This is a veteran player who was very good at Harvard, in the Patriot League. Yes, it's not quite the Big Ten, but he was a solid player. Auburn was after him. He had initially committed, I think, to Auburn. They had the coaching change, and he instead kind of went with Penn State. I think this is a guy, he didn't even get to Penn State until summer camp. He's fit in quickly. I think they like him, and I think this is good. This is the smart move to go with him. I think he understands things a little bit better. He's got the experience. He's certainly got the size. I think moving forward, I think he's the guy, Dave, on the offensive line. And there was one other, it wasn't really personnel, but he was asked late by Nate Bauer about Ellis Brooks. And I think we really probably got to really talk a little bit about him. He's really grown as a player. A couple of years ago, you watched him play and you're like, well, you just don't know. You don't know what his ceiling's going to be, and you just don't know if he's going to get there. But man, he was really, really good against Wisconsin before the targeting call. Still had 11 tackles, 8 solos. He had a sack in the first half. Franklin also talked about him being the quarterback of the defense, getting guys, in the right spots, communicating. They run a lot of different stuff and they have to adjust maybe, to what Wisconsin's doing pre-snap. And he thought he did a great job. He said it was his best game as a Lion. So I was impressed with Ellis too. But your thoughts either on Wilson or Brooks kind of moving forward?
I think he reminds me a little bit of Jason Kabinda as far as a boss, a guy with a big personality who you never have any doubt who's running the defense there. Jesse Luketa, I suppose, will do fine, but he was only asked to play for a quarter before. Now he's going to be asked to play at the beginning. And it really is the guy who controls everything. It's the control center of the defense. And it's not a position you just fall into and know exactly what you're doing. It's good that Luketa is a veteran player, but that's not an easy position to play. And he's going to have to play for half. I know it's a MAC opponent, but still, I think it's something worth watching. As far as Wilson, hopefully now against, this is not Wisconsin that they're playing. It's not Wisconsin's front seven. What I want to see is how the passing game gets going without all this pressure up front and Clifford just having to get rid of the ball, which he did in a lot of the first half. I believe they had 1 first down in the first half. Is that correct?
1 first down, 2 rushing yards.
Yeah. So I would assume that they can get some running game going and some continuity and flow in their passing game. And I would like to see how Clifford throws without people in his face all the time. We'll assume we will see that against Ball State.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that offensive line is what we think it was, because Wisconsin threw a lot of stuff at him. Do you agree with that? I mean,
I do think as Wisconsin moves forward, I think they play late September. They think they have Eastern Michigan this week. Then they have a bye, and I think then they play
Notre Dame
game. I think at a neutral site field. That'll be a really good indicator if they can kind of slow Notre Dame down too, of just kind of what Penn State had to face. And not only that, it was the fans are back. So I can imagine early in the game at Camp Bredel that Penn State played, between the noise and just the talent that Wisconsin had with their game plan and Jim Lenhart, I didn't think they would struggle as much as they did, but I can see why they were really scrambling at times in the first half. And then I think they got comfortable. Yurcich made some adjustments, and, I thought Wilson coming in was one of them. And the game plan, you're right, to make them defend the outside. And if you're going to blitz and we're going to pick it up, we're going to go over the top of your safeties because we don't really think that much of them. We have Jahan Dotson and you don't. That's what you saw. You didn't. I don't even know if Wisconsin, they might have had 1 sack, or it just didn't come that easy for them after halftime, after the adjustments.
You have to make them play. You have to be able to play outside a phone booth. They want you to play in a phone booth. That's what they're good at.
Yeah.
I think you nailed also. I got to give you credit. I mean, I thought you game planned that game about as well as anything you've done, because also the matchup was Yurcich against Jim Leonard.
It was.
And Leonard won the first half. Yurcich won the second half. And they both did a great job. That was a terrific coordinator battle. And that was where the game was decided.
Yeah. I really think that you look at the scoreboard and you say, well, Penn State only scored 16 points. But I'm telling you, Dave, I don't know if you're going to agree with me, but I don't know that maybe Joe Moorhead, I don't know if any other coordinator during Franklin's time would not have gotten Penn State situated in the second half the way that Yurcich did. I think that Joe Moorhead probably would have done it too, because he did it twice in 2016. They were getting stomped at Pittsburgh. He made some adjustments. They scored points at will in the second half. And in the Big Ten title game, when they were behind 28-7, he didn't panic. They went after Wisconsin with deep shots. I think Mike Yurcich is probably the only guy that could have designed the offense in the second half and have been able to adjust and communicate the adjustments in a short time to the players. I think that he actually did a pretty good job, in a very stressful environment in his first game.
All right. Do you treat Ball State as a tune-up of the machine, or do you preparation for Auburn, or do you treat this as a legit opponent and we want to beat them by 50?
I think it's going to be the latter. I do believe that. I think it's actually good that Penn State's offense is probably going to be a little angry this week at the way they played in the first half. I think the Penn State defense, it's almost like it's two game plans, Dave, because what I would say is the thing that I would be worried about with Penn State's defense is the amount of time they spent on the field against Wisconsin. You know, they just can't, not that they would, but, you know, I think you're going to see them, if they get a chance, you're going to see them use a lot more of their depth, because that when you play, that's almost like playing two games in 4 quarters when you play that many snaps. And they were contentious snaps. I mean, they were.
Yeah, that's not just 95 snaps. That's 95 snaps with a lot of contact.
Yeah,
for that front seven and the safeties.
Yeah, and I think that with Auburn on the horizon, I think big picture, I think it's almost, if you're James Franklin, you're managing two different factions differently. I think the Penn State offense is probably going to get, you know, they probably read the riot act on the practice field this week. But if you're coaching the defense and you're Franklin and you're Brent Pry, I think you have to be mindful of how much effort was spilled to get that win, because I don't see how you physically bounce back as fast after you play a game like that. So I think if you're Franklin, I'd almost try and take it easy on the defense this week, but I would definitely get after the offense, because it was really two different performances. I'm curious to see how they'll have their legs this week after playing. I don't remember them being on the field ever for that many snaps in a game that didn't go in overtime. Maybe you remember.
2004, baby. I'm telling you.
Were they actually on the field for 95 snaps?
I think they had plenty of games that they were over 85.
Sounds like a good column, Dave.
Yeah.
You could look at it.
I'd have to look at snaps on that. I'm not sure if we archived that deeply on snaps of play. I think we could find that.
Yeah.
The other thing is I would guess the optimum game plan for this is, you know, normally you're going to try to take some shots deep. Yursich is always going to do that with Jahan Dotson. But here you would probably, the optimum thing that you would want to do is 12, 14, 15 play drives, keep the defense off the field with that objective, and maybe keep the ball 35, 36 minutes so you don't overwork that defense. You like that?
Yeah, my man, I do like that. No, but I think that if Penn State can get a lead, you will see them. Franklin also talked about, you know, the 4-minute offense, or whatever you want to call it. They, you know, the running game, just save for a few plays by Noah Cain and that offensive line in the second half, it just wasn't there. And I know that that's going to be something. You're right. As much as they want to score and score quickly, create big plays,
you got to change this game.
I do think they need to kind of dedicate, you know, if they can, you know, so what if it's only 4 or 5 yards at a clip, or 3 yards at a clip?
Right.
We got to get this. We have to at some point be able to run the ball against a pretty good defense. Ball State's defense is not bad. They have a lot of starters back. And Auburn's defense is big, deep, and athletic. So, yeah, I do think you'll see them approach this game differently if they can. Franklin's really weird about, he likes, you know, he keeps his start. He'll keep that quarterback in even if they're up 30 points in the fourth quarter. But I'm curious to see what the running game's going to look like for sure. And I just don't know. I don't know how good Ball State is. I saw that. We'll talk about it in our next podcast. We're going to have 2 this week where we kind of.
They gave up some points to the Leathernecks, baby. So I don't think their defense is that great.
Yeah. And we'll get into just how badly their pass coverage was in week 1. Things tend to change. But yeah, we're going to get into that when we do our next Blue White Breakdown podcast. That should go for a little bit later in this week. But Dave, the time has flown by, as always with you. I want you to remember, if you're going to get that James Franklin impersonation tight, hopefully you take my advice, fine tune it, because I'm waiting for the moment you get to spring it on him. I think he'll like it. But any other closing thoughts for you before we wrap up this edition of the Blue White Breakdown?
I'm happy to see fans back. I hope it works out.
Yeah, that's another thing we'll probably talk about on Thursday, is how stoked and how large the audience is going to be Saturday at Beaver Stadium.
Yeah, I hope everything works out as far as COVID. I hope we don't have super spreader events. And it's outside. I think outside has always been different than inside. So let's be hopeful.
All right, guys, that's it for this edition of the Blue White Breakdown. PennLive's Penn State football podcast. David Jones and Bob Flounders. I'm Bob. That's Dave. We're signing off now, but you're going to hear from us real soon.